connection, and inspiration meet.
I'm DJ Hamouris.
And I'm Erin Mae Lewis.
Together, we're your hosts for these beautiful conversations that celebrate the vibrant women of the dulcimer community.
Since June of 2022, Dulcimoon Talks have brought you into the lives and stories of extraordinary women, leaders, teachers, producers, and artists who are shaping and sharing the art of the dulcimer in unique ways.
Our guests come from all walks of life. Many balance their passion for dulcimers with careers far outside the music world, yet they all share one thing: a deep love for the dulcimer and the joy it brings to teaching, practicing, performing, and creating.
Each episode is an intimate journey exploring personal musical paths, sources of inspiration, and the beautiful ways dulcimers weave into our lives. Think of it as the kind of meaningful conversation you'd have while sharing a meal at a festival. A mix of insight, laughter, and heartfelt connection.
Whether you're a long-time dulcimer enthusiast or just curious about this amazing world, Dulcimoon Talks are here to inspire, inform, and delight.
We release new talks twice monthly and are thrilled to have you on this journey with us. Make sure to subscribe and join the growing community as we honor the magic of dulcimers and the people who make them sing.
Dulcimoon Talks, sharing stories,
celebrating connections,
keeping the music alive.
Hi, friend. There we go. Technology is our friend. Welcome to Dulcimoon Talk number 53 with my friend Mary Lynn Michal. Hi, Mary Lynn.
Hi.
Good morning, afternoon, where you are, I guess.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you. I met you a bunch of years ago at a dulcimer festival, and I've just watched you develop from taking a lot of classes to starting to teach to now being maybe the teacher I know with the most students, with 100 or more private students, which is amazing. And we're delighted that you're going to be our headliner hammer dulcimer teacher for Dulcimoon 2026. So get excited about that
I'm
already.
looking forward to it.
Yeah. So we generally kind of start the conversation with how did you get into dulcimer? But I know that your musical journey started much before you started with the dulcimer. So why don't you take us to the beginning of sort of dipping your toes into the music world?
Okay. When I was 6 years old, my dad told me you have to take 2 years of piano lessons. At the end of that 2 years, you can quit or you can take another instrument, but you're going to take piano for 2 years. My brother had the same requirement. At the end of his 2 years, he went to his dad, my dad, and said, "I'm done." And my dad said, "You have to go tell your piano teacher you're done." And he says, "No problem." He walks in, "I'm done," released from his 2-year commitment. I took my 2 years and kept going, played all the piano all the way through, college. And my sister, at the end of her 2 years, she was done. And my dad says, "You have to go tell your piano teacher." And she said, She was scared. So she ended up playing for 2 more years to get up her nerve to say no. I think those early piano lessons for me was a real feeling that I was doing it for the piano teacher. It wasn't she doing it for me. If I didn't practice, I got in trouble. So I think a lot of my teaching and motivating comes from some of those early piano memories of her, if my fingers weren't curved, whacking my knuckles with a pencil as this poor little 6-year-old. So I think sometimes women who influence us or people who influence us are somehow, we might not want to do it exactly the same way. So piano was very definitely, I see a C, I push the C button. I see an E, I push the E button. So that was good training for classical, the way to process music. Not so much for folk music and where I am today. 6th grade, I was allowed to be in the band. So I decided I wanted to play the trumpet. Well, my brother came in my bedroom and he said, "Don't do that. Please don't do that. Please don't do that." Because he was in middle school. He goes, "That is social suicide. I cannot have my sister playing a boy instrument." And I said, what? And he says, you can play the flute or the clarinet. And no offense to any flute players or clarinet players, but I was like, I don't want to play the flute. So that was my social suicide moment when I learned. And then the next year I heard a French horn, and I was like, the tonal quality of the French horn just like struck my heart. So then I ended up playing French horn all the way through, in undergrad and grad school, and then played in the symphony as a professional French horn player for 20 years. Somewhere along the way, probably 30 years ago, I was at a Christmas craft show and I heard Russell Cook playing the hammered dulcimer.
Okay.
And I was mesmerized. I stood by that booth and watched for hours while my mom and my sister were looking at earrings. And I begged and I begged and I begged. I didn't have any money. I begged my mother for a hammered dulcimer. You don't need a hammered dulcimer. And then 20 years later, it was Christmas time, and she says, what do you want? And I was like, what I really want is a hammered dulcimer. So it took me years to actually get my first hammered dulcimer. I think the hammered dulcimer, dulcimers in general, call you. I think the instruments call people, and it has to be the right time. So for me, I was homeschooling kids, and in the symphony, it wasn't the right time. But when the right time came, I fell in love and had my midlife switch to the hammered dulcimer. So that's sort of the musical journey of how I ended up with the hammered dulcimer.
So, did you study music in college?
Yes. So I was a music ed major. Undergrad
Okay.
was at UNC, Chapel Hill, and then grad school was Eastman School of Music, which is the most intense, when we had juries, which is every semester you had to play for faculty. I remember being up on the 7th floor practicing before juries, and the maintenance men coming by and locking all the windows. And I was like, huh? And they said, yeah, every year somebody jumps. So the amount of pressure that were on those, it was just so intense, and it was so stressful that, you shouldn't be worried about, jumping. But that was the amount of tension that was in trying to be perfect. So I think the classical world for me was every dot on the page had to be played exactly the way the composer wrote it, exactly the way the conductor wanted it, and exactly the way our section was supposed to be perfectly in tune. And that's a lot of pressure. Not so much creative and improvising and making up stuff, which I always wanted to do, and thought, oh, I can't, it just too scared to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, were you a French horn major? Was that
Yeah.
your primary instrument?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were music ed. So, with music ed in the sort of like pedagogy of teaching music, are there any pieces from that that you have pulled forward into your kind of folk music approach?
I'm sure every bit of what I learned in that world, I think, has sort of shaped me. I did a lot of work. My thesis was on like the inner game of music, because I was a tennis player, and I read the inner game of tennis, and my thesis was to apply those principles of what we think and what's in our head and performing on a musical instrument. So I had a bunch of 6th graders that I walked through performance anxiety. How do you prepare to play when you get nervous? So I think a lot of that's probably still in my teaching.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that.
Yeah.
100%. So when you finally got your hammer dulcimer, what did you do next? Having that classical musical layer so deeply drilled in,
Yeah.
what was the first thing you did when you got your hammer dulcimer?
I fortunately only spent about 3 weeks looking at stuff online, how to play the hammer dulcimer. And then I Googled hammer dulcimer teacher near me. And I was so blessed to find Sue Wilson. She was my first teacher, and she was a student of Ken Kolodner's. So I worked with her for just a little bit of time, and I kind of learned quickly because of my musical background.
Yeah.
I would read, and she would give it to me, and I would read it, I'd play it. And very shortly after working with her, she was gracious enough to say, there's this guy named Ken Kalodner in Baltimore that's my teacher, that you should go see him. So in 2012, I came to my first Sandbridge as a student, and I had never, ever, ever wanted to teach the hammer dulcimer. This was just sort of going to be my fun instrument, but the teacher was in me, and I looked at charts, I looked at curriculums in my mind, I looked at, and you can't turn off, I just couldn't turn off the teacher. So 2012 was my first Sandbridge here. And then I think I was really working to learn music in a new way then, but it wasn't until I had a car wreck in 2016. If you can imagine your whole life being music and then not being able to read music. So when I looked at the written page, it was gobbledygook. I couldn't count to 4. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't walk. So it was a life-altering event. I don't recommend this for the transition from classical to folk. I don't recommend
It's a traumatic transition.
The traumatic brain injury was very effective because I literally couldn't count to 4, couldn't read music. So I had to learn in a new way, which was much more theory-based and shape-based, and hearing and reproducing sound instead of seeing it on a piece of paper that I couldn't read anymore. So that was a hard knock on the head that made me have to develop some new skills. So
Did you have guides through that process? Was it therapy side or music side or both?
both. It was very definitely both. My neurologist says, there was a lady in the ER the same night I was there, and he really believes in the power of music for what I've done, because she still hasn't been to the grocery store. She can't leave home. She can't, I have vertigo and I get dizzy, and I had a lot of memory loss. I would forget things. So my neurologist doesn't really believe I can do what I'm doing. But I can have a lot of help. So I think that there was a healing, there's something about playing music and producing sound and those sound waves, coming back at you. So I don't have all the research for the healing power of the brain, but I know I was told that I could only improve for 1.5 years after the wreck. And I'm still improving. So I attribute music and those sound waves coming at me as a big part of my healing.
Wow. So when did you start pursuing teaching as a vocation, I guess? Did you ever teach music? So you had a music ed degree and then you played in the symphony. Were you teaching in that time period?
I was, yeah. I did a lot of band, some orchestra, but mostly band teaching and private piano students.
Okay, so you were in schools and had a private studio at that point. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So about, I think I started, let's see, I have notes here. I started teaching online and with FaceTime and Skype even, like 2018, 2019.
I did Skype too.
Skype was the worst.
Skype, man. Wow, technology has come a long ways from the Skype days.
It has. So I had students there. So then when 2020 came around and COVID hit, I was already, online, ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that you now help with Sandbridge, and I know that you have private students, and I know that you have online courses. So talk a little bit about kind of all of the different ways that you teach and what you like about all of the different ways, and like why teach in so many different ways rather than just focusing on one for you.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite ways, I'd have to be honest and admit, would be in person, whether it's an in-person festival or in-person lessons. But, I have students in Belgium and Alaska and England, and that's kind of fun. So having the option over Zoom, to teach over Zoom, to be able to, reach people that aren't in Middletown, Maryland. I mean, how many students would I have just if I was limited to Middletown, Maryland? So it has expanded my base, and I love having the opportunity to where it works better than I thought it would. You know, when I first started thinking about teaching online, I was, this can't be effective. You can't teach music over a computer. But I think having, microphones and cameras over my instrument, being able to see their instrument, I'm amazed it works as well as it does. So my preferred way would be in person, but I would not trade my online opportunities for anything, whether it's an online festival or online or in person. But I think I've just put together a bunch of different pieces, So I love them all. Love them all.
What about the courses that you've created? I'm curious about this because I have a lot of resistance to personally to like, okay, I'm going to teach this one way and put it out on the internet and that's the course because I feel like I'm constantly sort of changing up the way I teach just a little bit to meet the needs of the people who are in front of me in
Yes.
that
Yes.
moment. So how did you get there?
Well, yeah, I think that's true. Some of my students now are looking back at my teaching 3 years ago and laughing because I have changed my process a lot. How did I get there? One student asked me to teach theory, so I co-authored the Mastering Theory book with Ken, and it ended up being 100 pages. It's not exactly a beach read. So then I discovered that people can't just read this book and get themselves through it. So a student said, you need to, like, on Sunday afternoons, just have a class on theory. And I was like, nobody is going to pay me to sit around and talk about music theory. Turns out I was wrong. There's a really big interest in it. Laurie just fact-checked me today, and we've had 501 students take that theory class, which is a year-long class walking through the book. So how did I get there? Some students asking me to do it, but I'd have to say that Laurie McCarriar, my business partner, and we founded HD Homeland together, is absolutely how I got there. And I could never, ever have done it without her. So we'll bring her on in a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, tell us a little bit more about that. How did you and Laurie meet? How did you start working together?
Laurie and I met at Sandbridge. Now, I have to say I probably was not the most popular student who ever came to Sandbridge. Let's just say I was a little intense.
Were you trying really hard to get it perfect
Yes.
and to know what perfect meant?
Yes.
Yes.
How do you know? Yeah, I was a little
Just a guess.
intense. I was a little intense. And I didn't mean to be. But all my background was, it wasn't uncommon to practice 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day.
Yeah,
That's what it takes. It
back then
wasn't
it was pretty
I
intense.
wasn't trying to be intense. That's just what it took to master my instrument. Turns out not everybody felt that way. They were here for a vacation. And so I think I got a reputation for being intense when I wanted an instrument in my room. So, you're in classes all day. And then I was in my room practicing everything I learned all day on day one, practicing to try to get all that, and then go day two. And then I stayed up all night trying to get day two. So by Friday, I was fried. And I remember just making it out to the ocean, noon on Friday. And then all of a sudden, there's this person standing beside me, and it's Ken Kaliner saying, "So, do you think you'll come back?" And I'm like, nope. And he goes, "Why not?" I said, "I can't play a single thing you taught, in the whole week. I haven't mastered a single tune." And he said, "You're not supposed to." And I said, I missed that memo. Because, in the classical world, if you have a rehearsal and you're giving music, when you come back that next rehearsal, if you don't have it, you're fired. So I think I was putting stuff on me from my old lifestyle that wasn't very nice. But so I don't know what Laurie's perceptions of me were. You can come say if you want. But so Laurie was all things tech for Sandbridge. And I would say that I didn't make a good first impression. I think I grew on her like a fungus. So I don't know. Laurie, come here. I need help. And I know that one day, this is Laurie McCarriar, my friend and
Hi,
business
Lori.
partner. There's the famous avocado story.
Oh dear.
Do you want to tell the avocado story?
I don't know. I think it's a little much.
We're here for all of it.
Well, I had a friend who was the chef at Sandbridge, and I found out that Mary Lynn and Laurie had started this crab cake breakfast tradition thing, and I had an avocado, and I thought it might go well with it, so I came over with my avocado. What about me? Can I come?
And then we had breakfast together.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, as Mary Lynn was saying, I've been doing tech stuff for Sandbridge along with playing, of course, and I had a big background helping artists in Asheville with technology and marketing and all this other stuff. Always thought, online classes are going to be the thing to do, and so Mary Lynn is teaching private students and more and more and more and more, and I'm just kind of like, there's got to be this thing, and I came across a platform I really liked, and I would say, Mary Lynn, what about doing like this online class? Nobody wants to do that, so we would just, pick at it year after year, and finally it was just time to go leap into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started HD Homeland with some classes, like a tune that might last 4 classes, and found out that people really loved it. And part of what I did for those online classes was I grouped people in buddies. So let's say I had, I don't know how many we had in that first class, but what we did is we buddied them up so that they were 2 people that were taking the class could get together and play and share their struggles and progress. And we had a group of 3 women, and that first class was 2020. They have been a group. They have met every Wednesday over Zoom, every Wednesday since 2020. So it's 5 years, and they still share their, so I think some of it is, the camaraderie when you get people learning together. I think people like that.
So those were like live on Zoom classes that you were
Correct.
doing?
And then are also available for repurchase, so now it's up on the website, and anybody who wants to buy it can also revisit that.
Nice. Sweet. Yeah. So, Mary Lynn, I'm curious. You went to Sandbridge for the first time in 2012, and you said you weren't going to go back. What changed your mind?
I absolutely loved Sandbridge. Sandbridge was my happy place.
Once you figured out that you didn't have to master everything?
Once I slept, I had not slept in a week. So, you get home and you get a good night's sleep, and you start working on these tunes for a year.
Yep.
There was nothing that matched it for me for the instruction, and I absolutely loved the friendships that I made there. So I was living in North Carolina and wanted to take lessons from Ken in Baltimore. That is 6 hours away with DC in the middle. And it was a horrible commute. And people that I had just met at Sandbridge were like, you could stay with me. I was like, what? Wait, we just met. There were no strangers here at Sandbridge. Just everybody opened their homes, and those friendships that I formed were unparalleled, which music does.
And music does do that. It's really amazing. One of the things that has been just like so incredible to me is the people I've met only online who then are like, yeah, of course, come stay with me. And then it feels like we're just meeting up again like we always have, even though in reality we're meeting in person for the first time ever, and I'm staying on their couch,
And isn't it funny? You don't know how tall people are.
It's so true.
When you first meet somebody, you're like, oh, because we just stare at these little boxes.
Yes.
You don't know how tall anybody is.
You have legs, we say to each other. Yeah. It's really, really the the relationships and connections built through music are so powerful. And
Yeah.
yeah, the um the healing power of music to get us through those hard places and the relationships we make from music. I And folk music in particular, I don't see that happening in a lot of other places where you have one encounter. I mean, you went to one camp and then in the follow-up, you had people who stayed in contact with you, who then followed up. That it sounds like it was not so much the first few days you spent at Sandbridge, but the ways after Sandbridge that the connections continued to be important that made it where you said, I have to go back. Does
Yeah.
that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was life changing. It was, I'm very thankful for Sandbridge and Laurie and Ken and what it's done for me. I was told my whole life, you can't make a living teaching hammer dulcimer. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a music major, and my dad said, you can under one condition. You have to take typing.
Okay.
That that was not the vote of confidence that I was looking for, but I did. I had to take typing. I took 2 semesters of typing, and I have to say I did work as a legal secretary, and I used that typing to get through grad school. But it wasn't the vote of confidence I was looking for.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I could be a full-time mountain dulcimer player and teacher. You know, I always thought if I was gonna make it as a musician, it would be as a piano teacher because there would always be students who wanted to do that. And it's largely because of the online community that makes it possible for us to be non-geographically centric. That creates that possibility, but then it's so magical because there really are a lot of people who want to know about these cool folk instruments and the folk music approach and all of it. Yeah. So tell us a little bit. I know you recorded an album not too long ago. Tell us a little bit about that process. I'm imagining that with your classical perfectionist background and then your move into more folk music and folk music approaches and the having to retrain your brain in a new way, that going to the studio brought back a lot of the feeling of pressure and perfectionism. Is that
That would be true. That would
what'd
be
you do?
true.
How'd you overcome it? How'd you get to the end of having an album?
Phew. That's a great question. It was frightening, and like I don't like microphones. These things are scary.
Yeah.
They're scary. So I think
They kind of get right in your face, don't
yeah,
they?
they
They
just
don't give you a lot of space. They're just right
yeah.
there.
I think eventually I got to the point that I realized recording is actually more forgiving than a live concert. So in a live concert, whatever you put out there, that's it. You one and done. So when I realized that you could miss a note and keep going, and then you might have that same note in another take, once I realized the art of what that sound engineer does, then I relaxed a little bit, and I was like, oh, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to get it. I think there was only one take on the CD that was just one take that I just played it straight through, and that was my solo one of Wayfaring Stranger. I just played that right through. But everything else, you're able to do more than one take, and oh, I like the A part of this, or I like the B part of that, and having somebody to walk you through it, you know, which would be Ken Kolodner and the sound engineer and the people that walked me through it, and students who believed in me. And you know, I think people have believed I could do this long before I could. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
you
tell
know.
me a little bit more about that.
Well, you know, Ken Kolodner told me, you can make a living teaching hammer dulcimer. And I was like, I've been told, no, I can't. So I think Ken believed in me. Laurie McCarriar believed in me. Laurie believed we could do this. And, I do remember saying, no, nah.
Oh, no, that's not gonna work. That'll
No
never work.
thanks.
That'll never, nobody's going to pay me to talk
Nobody's gonna
about
do
music
that.
theory. So Laurie's vision for the business side of things and how to market things, how to sell, how to market, I don't know, you could say, but,
I was gonna say, Lori, do you want to speak to what was it that you were seeing that made you think we should do this and I should tug Mary Lynn along and make this happen? What was it?
Well, I don't know. I was just seeing the possibilities. Like I said, I had always had this idea of online teaching things, and I was at one point where I was going to do that kind of a thing for some of my tech things or whatever like that. And I couldn't quite see that as a vision. I said, you know what, Mary Lynn's got this base of skill and just this way of teaching that needs to be out there. And so I just said, yeah, this would be a great way to expand the vision. And she was just kind of like, nobody's going to want to do that. And I said, yeah. She said, well, maybe we can get, 50 people or 100 people. And I said, I think we can get more than that. And so every time we would fill up the spreadsheet rows, I just keep adding spreadsheet rows to make room for people. So.
So did the partnership that you've developed happen sort of organically, or did one or the other of you come in and say, I really need the other person in order for this to be possible?
I think it was pretty organic. We just kind of started just tossing ideas around and saying, this would be cool. You want to do that? No. Yeah, let's do that. No, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really sweet.
I definitely needed help. So, I really did. So I still do. The reason this interview is happening is that she put it on my calendar for me. So I still have memory loss. I have, I have some brain issues that, I think part of what's unique about my career is the power of the team. We call it the team, and that's Ken Kalodner, Laurie McCarriar, and me. And we are so much stronger as the three of us than any one of us would be. And to recognize what each person brings to the team and what each person does, I think it's unique. I don't see this, and I think for me, it definitely comes out of weaknesses in me and recognizing what I can't do and needing help and asking for help. And Laurie has the skill set that is unparalleled for what I need and what Laurie does for me and what Ken does for me. I'm very blessed to be part of this team. It's really unique.
Yeah, I agree. And I have gotten to watch you guys a couple of times where I think a big part of why it works is that you are all really willing to say, I need fill in the blank, or can you help me with fill in the blank, or can you do this for me, which is a thing that not a lot of us have the skills to recognize. This isn't really in my skill set. I need help with it. And I know that every project that I have done that feels successful and I feel really proud of has been because I didn't do it by myself. It's been a collaborative effort, but I think it's really special and magical the way you guys have found your group of people to build that team that's so strong with the musical skill and the communication skill and the tech skill to bring all of those pieces together. So I agree, it's really special, and I love getting to watch you in action.
I love watching you in action.
Mutual Admiration Society.
I love our shared heart for education. We've had some phone calls and just sharing, I like the way you have an eye for education. You're very intentional about what you do, and I've learned a lot from you.
Likewise, the paying attention to curriculum design and development and ways that we communicate with our students and to our students, and the mindset piece too. You know, you started by talking about the first teacher you had taught you how you don't want to teach. um I think that I think that's also a really important piece of music education, especially with adult education.
That's where I was going too. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Adults.
Well, there's just so many more layers of stuff in the brain that you have to kind of process and overcome but I think I say often that my biggest inspirations are my older students who have retired and then come to an instrument for the first time in their lives. The bravery it takes to start something completely new after you have successfully done a lot of things in your life, it's amazing to me. So I am very inspired by my adult students, and there's a lot more to learning, like helping them learn their instrument than just where do you put your fingers or
Right.
which note do you hit on the instrument, right?
That's exactly what I feel and was going to say. It's very hard for an adult to be a beginner.
Yeah.
You know, a 6-year-old or 5-year-old or 4-year-old who picks up a violin and scratches, they don't know what it sounds like or what it should sound like, and they're just fine to go.
Yeah.
And
And they're a beginner at everything they try, right? They're not
Right.
already an expert at some things and then starting fresh.
So to be an expert and have to start, and to be willing, to put something that's very, personal to you out there is hard. So, yeah, I love all of my students, but I agree. I really respect people that have been very professional and very successful, and then they have to be a beginner with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So if you were going to give some advice to somebody who's just getting into music or maybe just moving towards teaching as a goal, what would you tell them?
Actually, you can. I have a t-shirt, I almost wore it. It says, actually, I can. I've been told my whole life I can't do this. Well, it turns out I can, with a lot of help from other people. Look at this. It's possible. I'm supporting myself. So, yeah, so actually you can. And I think to follow your passion, I'm kind of a nerdy hammer and dulcimer teacher. I'm pretty theory heavy. I would say because I know how important it is, and not everybody teaches that way. So to follow your strengths. So as a teacher or a student, be true to who you are. I can't be somebody else. I do remember the Bells and Whistles concert just recently. I looked at all these really big names, famous people, and I was like, I'm just me. But to be comfortable to be just me, I haven't been playing for 40 years. I don't have the gifts and the skills that the other performers had on that set. And I'm aware of that. I'm a newbie, but I also leaned into who I really am. And I think to be authentic as a person and as a teacher is what I would advise, whether you're coming to the musical instrument or as a teacher, just to be authentic for who you are and not to compare yourself with anybody else. If you want to be miserable, compare yourself. Oh, somebody else gets it faster than I do or whatever. If you want to be miserable, compare yourself. But if you want to enjoy your process and enjoy your pace, so some of my students they call themselves slow learners. And I'm like, no, you're a thoughtful analyzer. And it takes you longer to process because you're a deeper thinker. So whoever you are, be you. If you're a deep thinker, be a deep thinker. And if you're a fly by the night improviser, go fly by the night improvise. You be you. So to be who you are and not compare yourself to anybody else.
Yeah, I love that. Laurie, how about you? What about if people are scared of all things technology? What would you encourage them with?
Just call me. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you have already got a full-time job helping Mary Lynn.
That's right.
You got to go. Get out of here.
I got things to do now.
I see an email over there.
No, seriously, it's really I see it all the time. Is that people are just afraid to try something on technology. You know, they're afraid to push that button. You know, they'll say, "Laurie, I've got this far," and I said, "Well, what about that big red button that says push?" You know, and they go, "I don't know, I was afraid to touch it," and I said, "Just push the button," and they push the button, and the screen comes up, and it's done. You know, it's technology, it's just stuff, you know.
But do you remember when you could push a button and it would break the whole computer and it would be dead?
Nah.
I remember that. I killed more than one computer.
Yeah, I think it is
Long big red
useful
button.
to have somebody on backup for the. But most of the software now is pretty hard to break it with
It's
the
pretty hard to-
obvious
it's pretty hard-
buttons.
Yeah, it's pretty hard now, right? Yeah, and I do have that experience is that people call me up and say, this doesn't work. And I said, okay, well, I'll just walk them through one step at a time, and then it works. And it's just because I was on the phone, so.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 And I think you don't have to learn all of the things all at once. Like
Correct.
I am really, really good at Zoom and not a whole bunch of other things related to technology, right? Because that's the one that has helped me do what I need to be able to do. And then it's like I'm gonna learn one more piece of software and not try to like learn all of the technology all at once. So
Exactly.
yeah. And call Laurie if we get stuck.
Oh boy, that's right out there alive, huh?
What's Erin Mae's phone number? Quick.
Yeah, quick.
Yeah, right?
Laurie McCarriar with Erin's phone number.
Call Laurie. Erin's phone number.
Erin's phone number.
That would be fair. Well, I just want to say thank you both for spending some time with us today. Thanks for
Thank you.
making
Sure,
it a
thank
priority,
you.
and thanks for Mary Lynn agreeing to teach for Dulcimoon next year. We're super
Thanks for
excited
asking me.
to have you.
I'm looking
Did I-
forward to it.
Did I miss anything that you want to make sure people know? I know you have a few websites. Do you want to just list off your website?
www.hdhomeland.com. www.marylynmichael.com. I thought it was Mary Lynn's music. Mary Lynn Michal, MICHAL.com. No E.
And your social medias are Mary Lynn's music, I think. Is that right?
Yes, on Facebook.
On
Yeah,
your Facebook. Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. Sweet. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You rock. I'm so
So do
excited.
you. I'm a huge
Glad we got to
fan,
share this
Erin.
conversation. Hearts on the ground. Big hugs.
Big
Look forward to
hugs.
seeing you in person one of these days, but we'll keep connected
Yes.
online ways.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yay.
Was it okay?